Hi everyone, we're going to be looking at food chains today. So we're going to carry on from last week's lesson. We're just going to have a little recap of what we learnt last week and go over some of the key vocabulary. So we're going to be looking at where do animals get their food from and can different animals depend on others for food. Okay, so we already know that animals live in habitats which are suited and they adapt to live in that habitat. Some animals live in microhabitats, and some of you at home have already looked around in the garden and park for little microhabitats. We all know that all animals have basic needs from which to get from their habitat, and they have adaptations to help them obtain their basic needs. Okay. Now look at this picture here. We have a lion trying to eat its food, so it's trying to hunt its food and eat its food. Okay. There are different types of food that animals can eat. So some animals get their food from eating plants, and we know these are called herbivores. We have other animals that have get their food from eating other animals, and these are called carnivores. Okay. And we have some animals that eat plants and animals, and these are called omnivores. Okay. So have a little think about what you might be. Are you a herbivore that eats plants? Are you a carnivore that just eats animals? Or do you eat both? Are you an omnivore? I am a herbivore because I do not eat meat. I only eat vegetables. Okay, so have a little think about what you could be. Right, food chain. So we looked at this last week and we had a go at making some as well. So we're going to have a little recap, a little reminder of what a food chain is, okay? Food chain shows how each animal gets its food, and they are one of the ways that living things depend on each other to stay alive, okay? So we're just going to have a little watch of a video.
What is a food chain? All living things, including humans, animals, and plants, need energy to live. But where do they get their energy from?
Where do you think we get our energy from? Where do animals and plants get their energy from?
The answer is easy. All living things get their energy from food. Plants make their own food with the help of sunlight, air, and water. Animals and humans don't produce their own food, so they need to eat plants or other animals to get energy and survive.
Okay, so we need to remember that plants make their own energy, make their own food, they make their own food and they get their energy from the sun. We, as people, as humans and animals, we can't make our own food, so we need to eat other foods to get our energy.
They are all part of a food chain. A food chain shows how plants and animals depend on each other as their source of food. For instance, a caterpillar eats plants, mice eat caterpillars, and owls eat mice. There.
Right, who can remember what their special names are that we can give these animals? Okay, so we got a producer, consumer, predator, and prey. So have a little think. Looked at this last week. So your plant will be a producer because it produces its own food. The caterpillar is a consumer because it eats the plant to get energy. The mouse is a consumer and it is a predator because it hunts for the caterpillar to eat. And then we have an owl who hunts, which is a predator, which eats the mouse, and the mouse is its prey. Okay?
A perfectly simple food chain. And we can see food chains happening underwater too. Algae is eaten by small fish. Small fish are eaten by bigger fish. And bigger fish are eaten by sea lions, who are then eaten by sharks. There are lots of different food chains taking place around us, but food chains usually start with a plant and finish with a big, hungry animal. Like me.
Okay, so let's go back over here. So, which are the consumers? Look at this food chain that you can see. We've got some lettuce here, we've got a caterpillar, we've got a frog, we've got a snake, and then we've got an owl. So which ones consume the food? Yep, that's right. So we've got the caterpillar consumes, it gets its energy from the plant, the frog is a consumer, the snake is a consumer, and the owl is a consumer. The producer, who can remember what a producer is? So a producer produces its own energy, makes its own food. Yep, that's right, it's the plant. And how many predators are there? How many of them hunt for their food? Yep, so the owl will be one, and the snake will be one as well. Okay, so let's have a little checkpoint. What do we know? A mouse eats the oats in the farmer's barn, and a cat eats a mouse. So, can you write a food chain to show this? I want you to pause this video and just write down the food chain to show this. What would go at the start? What would go at the end? The mouse eats the oats in the farmer's barn, and the cat eats the mouse. Remember, a plant always goes at the start of the food chain, and it's usually the bigger animal that goes at the end. Can you name the producer, and can you name the consumer? Let's see if you're right. So your food chain should look something like this: oats with an arrow pointed to the mouse pointing an arrow to the cat. So remember, the arrow means eaten by. Oats is eaten by the mouse is eaten by the cat. And the producer is the oats, and then we've got the predator, the mouse, and the cat. Okay, so this is what we've been looking at. This is what we did last week. So important words to remember: habitat, food chain, producer, food, healthy, consumer, predator, and prey. Right, what I want you to do today is I want you to do the fluency task, and after each section you can pause the video and have a go at answering the questions. So fluency, you've got a garden spider, a blackbird, and a fox. And we've got some 4 questions. It says to answer in full sentences. So I don't want one-word answers, I want full sentences with capital letter and full stop at the end, okay? So, who eats the blackbirds? Who eats the spider? What might the spider eat? And who is the prey? Right, to answer these questions, I want to make sure you answer in full sentences. So this is what I want your answers to look like. So there's something eats the blackbird, and you've got to fill in the blank word. So is it the fox or the garden spider that eats the blackbird? Does something eats a spider? Is it the blackbird or the fox? Which word are you going to write there? The spider might eat. You've got to think of something yourself that you think the spider might eat. The garden spider might eat, okay? And what is the prey? The prey is, and you've got to choose one of these animals to say that is the prey, okay? You can pause this video and answer these questions, and then we'll move on to the next fluency task. Right. For this next task, you need to cut out and sort the cards into food chains for different habitats. This sheet I've actually put onto Google Classroom as a separate A4 sheet, so you can either print them out or have a look at them a bit closer. You need to cut them all out, and then you put them together to make a food chain, okay? you haven't got a printer, that's fine. You can just write the names on a piece of paper and just draw an arrow between each one. Remember that the plant usually always goes first. It's the producer at the very start, and then it's the predators at the end, which are normally the bigger animal, okay? And then as a little bit of a challenge, can you name which habitat this food chain might belong in? So is it in a woodland? Is it in a savanna? Is it in the ocean? So one of the examples I've given you here is on your piece of paper, you might put plankton, squid, seal, and polar bear. And the way that I figured it out is because on that piece of paper, with all the cards on it, actually gives you some clues. So I started off with plankton, and it says a microscopic plant. So that gave me an idea that, yeah, this is definitely a plant, and it's eaten by many animals. And I thought, well, what eats plankton? And I looked at all the cards that I could see, and it says the squid eats plankton and algae. So I knew that this one would go next. Okay. Then I thought, well, what could eat the squid? What could come next in the food chain? What's the squid eaten by? And I found this card here. It's the seal, and it says underneath, seal eats fish and squid. So I knew this would go next. Okay. And I thought, well, what eats a seal? And then I found another card that said a polar bear eats seals and fish. So I knew that this would go at the end. So this is my one food chain that I've created. Okay. So if you have a look at all the other ones, you've got other animals on there and other plants. You've got the fox there, you've got leaf, caterpillar, sparrow, you've got the farmer there, you've got grass, you've got the falcon and rabbit. Okay. So I want you to try and make food chains out of those ones that are left. And it will have clues at the bottom of each picture saying what they like to eat, like this one here. Okay, so I want you to pause the video, have a go at cutting these out and putting them all in order. If you haven't got a printer to print them out on, you can write the names down. So, for example, on here, you could just write plankton and draw an arrow, squid, draw an arrow, seal, draw an arrow, and then write polar bear, and that's your food chain, okay? And if you want to have a go at writing the names and drawing the pictures, you can do that as well, okay? I want you to find as many food chains from that sheet as you possibly can. Okay, so you can pause the video and have a go now. Okay, now that you've answered both fluency tasks, okay, now we're going to have a go at the thinking one. So true or false, this one is. True or false, a lion is a predator, okay? A lion is a predator. You need to think about what is a predator. Okay, I'm going to leave these slides on Google Classroom as well, so you can have a flick back onto the slides if you need to find out what a predator is, true or false. And this has to be answered in the full sentence. So I want something like this written down. I know that this is, now you need to put true or false here, because you need to tell me how you know that a lion is a predator or isn't a predator. Give me a reason, okay? What do lions do? Pause the video and you can have a go at answering this question. Right, now that you've done that thinking question, on to the next one. It's a show me one. Show me 3 different predators and what their prey is, okay? So I want you to think of 3 different predators. You can actually use your food chains that you wrote, that you did in your fluency. Have a look at the 3 predators and what their prey is, okay? You use that to help you. And I want you to write 3 sentences. So your sentences should look like this. Okay, a something is a predator and its prey is a something. You've got to fill in the blanks, okay? I want you to write 3 different sentences, 3 different predators and 3 different preys, okay? So what does a predator eat? And that'll be here, okay? What does it hunt for? Pause the video and you can answer these questions. Right, the explaining task. So Spartacus says that if all of the rabbits in the food chain below died, that all of the foxes would die too. Is he correct? Can you explain why? So I want you to have a little think here. If foxes eat rabbits, but all the rabbits died, what would the fox eat? Would they die too? And I want you to think, what would actually happen to the plants that the rabbits normally eat? Would they get eaten? Okay, and I want you to answer this as a full sentence. You should write a little paragraph of this, okay? So you could start your sentence off with, I think that if all the rabbits died in the food chain, that all the foxes would die too, because the foxes wouldn't have any food to eat. Okay. Or do you think that the foxes might eat other foods, not just rabbits? So do you think that the foxes wouldn't die? Or what do you think might happen to the plants if there were no rabbits to eat them? Pause the video and you can answer this question. Right, finally, the solving task. Some scientists believe that food chains end at the predator. So predator is the last thing in the food chain. Do you think this is correct? Can you explain why? So we've got a little food chain here. So we've got the sun giving energy to the plants making their own food, we've got an insect that eats the plants, the bird that will eat the insect, we've got a bigger bird that will eat the smaller bird. But what happens to this bird here is at the end of it, nothing eats the bird. A little clue here, decomposes. Okay, think about what might happen when this bird dies. What happens? Okay, the word decomposes here. Have a go at answering this question. And once you've done that, you can make sure you check your answer carefully. Have your answer, do you think this is correct? And explain why. Have a look at the end. What happens to the bird? Does something eat that bird? Does something eat the bird when it's alive? Does something eat that bird when it's dead? Okay. And once you've written your answer, it should be a full paragraph for this one. Quite a detailed one as well. Once you've done that, you've finished the whole task and learn all about food chains. I want you to make sure you take a picture of your answers and send them to me on Google Classroom or Class Dojo. If you have any questions about today's lesson, feel free to send me a message on Google Classroom or on Class Dojo. And I'll see you next week for our next science lesson.